Good afternoon. I believe we're into the afternoon session. I am asking all delegates and all representatives to kindly take your seats as our ministers ascend the platform in order to begin their panel discussion headed by Dr. Edem Abdurrah.
Can I?
Low.
Okay. They put me on the high table here. Good afternoon. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this is the first ministerial panel that the task force is putting up at the Policy Dialogue Forum, as we said. We have on the podium for this panel the Honourable Reid, Minister of Education, Youth and Information of Jamaica. Her Excellency Ms. Sengdeuane, Lachanthaboune, Minister of Education and Sport of the Lao People's Republic. Her Excellency Ms. Mailis Reps, Minister of Education and Research of the Republic of Estonia. And His Excellency Mr. Cyriaque Yawo, AKAKPO, Numado, representing the Minister of Education, Higher Education and Research of Togo. Honorable Ministers, the purpose of this forum and the ministerial panel is to have your high-level insight and input about the theme of the forum. We have had an excellent opening ceremonies with an inspirational opening speech by the host minister. And at this point, we would like to say that the Sustainable Development Goals adopted at global level need to be implemented at country level. And teachers are recognized in that as means of implementation. Means of implementation for all the other goals. To that extent, we would like to know what the countries are doing with their partners at regional level, and then in their own countries, initiating innovative reforms to meet the target. So in the first turn, I will ask each minister to tell us what is happening at regional level in relation to the teachers and teaching, quality of teaching and teachers and training. In the second round of questions, we will ask the ministers to share, to dwell on one specific sub-theme of the forum, to say and describe more at length what they have achieved, what the issues were, what results have been achieved, what challenges are met, and what remains to be done. So, without further ado, and at the end of the session, we'll give the floor to the audience to ask a couple of questions. I will invite you to identify yourselves, to keep your questions short and crisp, and if possible, to indicate the minister or ministers you would like to target your question to. I will be selective and make sure that we have equal distribution in the room. The first thing I would like to be proud of is the gender balance among the panel we have here. First question to Honourable Reid. Your country is hosting this 11th forum, and we know that in the Latin America and the Caribbean region, there are initiatives to implement SDG 4 as a region. Recently, there was a ministerial meeting, was it in Colombia? And maybe during the deliberations, the ministers talk about teacher issues. What are the main priorities of Latin American and Caribbean? And what are the strategies that are being explored to address those challenges? Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Maybe it's on.
Testing 1, 2, 3. All right, I guess I'll use this one. But thank you very much, Chairman, for that question. Certainly, when we look at Latin America, it's interesting that we face similar challenges. UNESCO actually is saying that 12 years of, minimum of 12 years of education is what is ideal prescription, and that has not necessarily been the experience with Caribbean and Latin America. In many instances, about 9 years. But we, as I pointed out in my own presentation, part of the gap in that regard is on two spectrum. One, you didn't have adequate trained teachers from our own history coming out of colonialism, etc. You didn't have adequate capacity in terms of the amount of schools. And it's not, you can argue even whether it's a chicken and egg situation. And this is what I'm saying. I think when you talk about development, there's an aspiration. So you have to have the institutions, first of all, to train the teachers. You need to have persons qualified to be trained as teachers. If you look at where we're coming from, where you had to achieve universal primary, then you had to try to get more tertiary institutions, because we started off very often in the region with a lot of, after the expatriate teachers, we really had locals who were pre-trained teachers. And it's the same history within Latin America and the Caribbean. Fast forward to 2018, we're trying to correct that by ensuring, and certainly in the case of Jamaica, we were able to use our universities. We've had immersed in our universities teacher training programs. There's a time when we only had teacher training in our teacher training colleges, which for many years only offered certificate, then diploma, and not to the degree level. The data I saw this morning is that we have about, and when I was president in 2005, we had only 20% of our teachers who had a first degree. I'm seeing the data appears that we are now at 53%. We are trying with the JTC, which is a Jamaica Teaching Council, where we're trying to professionalize the teaching profession, and in so doing set a minimum standard that for persons to know enter and practice, they must come with a trained teacher status, a minimum of first degree. But again, I'm saying from the history I presented this morning, it's evolving, because you're at a point and you have to build the capacity, you have to build institutional capacity, you have to have the throughput, you have to have persons who are motivated and prepared and ready for the profession. So I think Jamaica is way ahead in that regard. I know countries like Barbados have been there, very strong. Trinidad, some of the smaller countries are struggling. Latin America have some of the same issues. We have Ghana is not doing badly at all. Chile, Mexico, Brazil, there is still some work to be done. I think Argentina is doing pretty well, Panama, etc. But I believe, as I said, from a womb to the tomb strategy, that we all have to prioritize quality teaching and teachers as a prerequisite for a very effective education system. And the truth is that as developing countries and economies, it's an aspiration. We will concede we are not there. My task as minister, and I spoke about it this morning, resources, for example, is an issue. The question is even for persons coming into the teaching profession and who don't have the resources, right? Should government appears fund those teachers to be trained and certified because we need them? But as I'm saying, and what I'm saying is what I've adopted. When I took over the ministry, yes, there was a program to train teachers for critical areas, but I'm saying I can't train them and then lose them. So I have to bond them for 5 years. So I train persons in the STEM areas, science and mathematics area, but I need to have them for 5 years. ICT is something that we're pushing as well. We have to empower the e-learning. Jamaica is going to also target the teacher training colleges to make sure that because you can't just have the technology in the schools. We have to have the technology in the teacher training institutions so that our teachers are fully empowered about the use of technology. And again, I'm saying to the teaching profession, technology, first of all, is about efficiency. So both efficiency in terms of training of teachers, efficiency in terms of delivery of educational services within our school environment. That's how I see the use of technology. So we're coming from a deficit, but I think we're getting there.
Yes, Your Excellency, is what you've just said. We know that the Latin American and Caribbean region has two specific regions where the Latin American group is more Spanish-speaking, and beyond the linguistic distinguishes, are there differences in the options that the region at the highest level is taking to address the SDG target on teachers?
Well, you know, I think there is equalization of strategy. I must say that there's greater harmony in the Latin American group than in our own Caribbean group. I'm not sure that we're all at the same level within the Caribbean CARICOM region. Cuba is way ahead in that regard. But I believe, as I say, that we all learning the lesson that we have to prioritize the importance of a quality teacher. And to make a quality teacher, you have to set the standard. Government by policy has to support the development of our teachers and the continuous professional development of our teachers. But as you very well know, in terms of the SDG goals, countries are at varying levels in terms of implementation. It's an aspiration. I think this forum is what reinforces that once we have an agreement that we work faithfully to fulfilling those agreements.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, Mrs. Sengdeuane, Lachanthaboune, what is the regional approach in Asia and Pacific to address the teacher target and some of the issues related to strengthening teacher education? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to share some, mostly in experience in our country. But as for ASEAN, is very big, 45 countries. But sure that we learn from each other, from ASEAN country and Pacific as well, from many platforms, from many forums, especially UNESCO forum that we have the chance to share together. And we have also ASEAN platform, and also ASEAN plus 6 country, and also we have ASEM, Asia Europe for education platform that we can learn from each other. Of course, 45 countries, there are some countries very advanced in education and also teacher education, and some countries less advanced. But the things that we share together is to do the educational reform, and we learn from each other. From our country, we did the educational reform from 2006 to 2015. We should go along with the education for all and also for MDG targets. And within the educational reform strategy, we have one component is about teacher education reform. And this reform, we set up the project called the Teacher Training and Enhancement of Status of Teachers, which is very successful in our case, because before that, teacher profession is less preferred by students. Not many people would like to enroll in teacher institutions. After the reform, we evaluate, we found that we have a lot of success. Because during the reform, we do the project teacher training and enhancement of status of teacher, and our government set up many policy, like in the law of education, stipulate one article about provide the ambience of favorize the teacher to be trained and upgrade themselves in the law of education. And beside that, the Prime Minister degree, 3 or 4 degrees is about provide incentive to teachers. One is to separate the salary scale of teachers from civil servant. Actually, the teachers still civil servant, but the salary is different, is higher than another civil servant. And also they can be promoted each year if they perform well. And for another civil servant, it's 2 years to be need to be have the criteria to promote. But teachers only 1 year if they perform well. And another degree is about the honorific titles of teachers. We have 2 kinds. People teachers and also national teachers. Very high standard, very high reward. But until now, we cannot find any because it's too high criteria that we set. And we try to find them. And the third one, Prime Minister degree, is about teacher titles, academic teacher titles. Which for general education, we have experienced teachers, specialist teachers, and especially, I don't know is the exact term in it. Yeah. We have four categories for general education. For first one, you can earn 40% of the basic salary. And for the second title, you can get 60% of the basic salary. And for the third title, you can get 80%. And for the fourth category, you can have double salary of basic education, or basic salary. This is for the general education. But for the higher education shouldn't be the same as many countries, like professor, assistant professor, and also professor. We have 4 also. Okay. I think it's the similar.
Very interesting. You raised the question related to teacher salaries and the effort your country is doing. But let me go back to the regional level. At the beginning, you mentioned a number of organizations. Do you feel, as a minister, that following all these various meetings or framework add more to you, or do they help facilitate the monitoring of the SDGs?
Actually, for us, the forum or the conference very useful for us. We try to share to learn with the conference and with the expert who come to work with us. And we try to find the budget to send them to attend the conference, to learn from the conference.
Thank you. My next speaker is Mrs. Mailis, the Minister of Education and Research of the Republic of Estonia. I think last week or a couple of weeks ago, there was a ministerial consultation in Europe and North. Yeah. So what are the key conclusions of that consultation as they relate to our themes here?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm from Estonia, and we have not Googled yet. It's in the very north, very close to Sengdeuane, and we're neighbors to Finland. So this is a small part of Estonia, and we have done a lot of different experiments. And what is the very good thing is that we are part of.
Sorry.
Okay, then I take this microphone. Will that be? Okay. So, well, I started out of saying that Estonia is next to Santa Claus and very north. And so you can later Google where it is. Estonia is a very small country which has learned a lot from our neighbors, including our good neighbor Finland, because when we 27 years ago became independent and we started to build up a new educational system, our aim was to become at least as good as they. And the good thing is that last year we passed them with 1 point. So that's the reason why I'm probably here. I will tell that when I come to the country one, but now about the regional. Europe has this wonderful thing that we have, the Council of Europe, which is discussing very similar lines and looks at the UN targets and then puts them into European context and sees what are the challenges. There are many people in the room who know much more detailed what happened in Strasbourg. I just outlined that we looked at the challenges. For example, we still have a challenge of having immigrant and asylum and stateless children. We are very worried that some of the children might not be actually recognized, because if they came to our radar, they get a good education, but they sometimes fall between the cracks, and that's what we are fighting against. But in Europe, we also have EU targets, and I'm very happy to see that EU targets and UN targets and the Council of Europe targets on that particular way are very similar in line. Maybe the ambition level is a little bit different, but they all look about inclusiveness, individuality, the new skills, and so maybe the wording is a little bit different, but the aims are very similar, and that's why I think here in this forum to be and to have this contribution here, it's very similar and easy. And in addition to that, there is another regional, actually global forum, which for educational policymakers is very important. It's the OECD, and I'm also happy to see that many of the OECD targets and UN targets are similar, which we actually also observe a lot, because we rely on a lot of comparative statistics which come from OECD and make our policies according to that.
Thank you. I like your idea of revealing to us that there is alignment among the targets. And Europe and OECD countries in general are considered as high-performing countries, and then when you look at US statistics, the gaps are not as huge there. But still, we hear that teacher challenges are pervasive. Do you think that the European region is also faced by the challenge of quality of teaching and teachers?
Oh, absolutely. Because the status of a teachers universally, it's very high if we are in conferences. But when we go back to home and we start debating our budgets, the teacher salaries are important, but not maybe as important maybe than some other policy lines. And that's a constant challenge, because if you don't if you don't allocate enough resources, then you don't have human resources. That's about, actually, sorry to say, but that's a lot about the money. So if you allocate enough resources, then you get better and better young people being attracted to that. But then the other challenge, what I see, is to give actually individual freedom to identify targets. It can be global, it can be regional, it can be national, and then between this target, give the teacher autonomy. Because more autonomy the person has in a classroom, and less we check them, the better the results are. Sorry to say, but that's proven by a lot of different research. If you give them a good education and retraining, and then you let them free, and then you cherish their freedom, you get excellent results. But what the problem is that we are worried about it, because the taxpayers are asking that my child, whoever the child is, got, I don't know, some problem in a class and got a bad grade. And then what we start normally doing is we start controlling them by different exams, by different tests, by different points. And then we start targeting different teachers by different things. And then we lose this autonomy. And this is the challenge I think we all have, but in Europe this is a lot discussed. And another challenge what we have is that Google knows more than the teachers. And this is the universal challenge now, because if we used to teach them a different historic things by heart, and the smarter you were was because you knew a lot of facts, and now it makes no sense. You need to teach them critical thinking, historic interpretation, you need to teach them to read critically, to understand what the facts and what Dr. Google tells is rubbish. And the problem is that we don't do it. We still teach them facts. And then we have this constant discussion, how much freedom teachers have to tell that half of the textbooks, which was printed and reprinted, and it's been giving us a good results, is actually not relevant. And you can half of that textbook not teach anymore because Dr. Google knows more. And that's a big debate.
From the audience, you say you have said it very excellently. Now let me move to Mr. AKAKPO Numado. I will invite the other ministers to put their headset because I'm sure he's going to speak in French. You hosted in Lomé, Togo, the last or 10th Policy Dialogue Forum of the Teacher Task Force, and the theme was on teaching a profession, saying what does it take to be called a teacher. What has your country done since Lomé to implement the outcomes of the declaration or the conclusions of the forum, and at regional level first? I know that in Nairobi earlier in the year, there was a regional consultation of the African continental strategy on education. What are the key lessons from this platform as related to teacher education?
Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It's an honor for me to share Africa's experience with regard to the question of teachers in teaching policies. Africa is facing a lot of challenges with regard to education, and in order to meet these challenges with regard to access to schools, to education, the quality of teaching, the African Union has put at the heart of its strategy professionalization of teaching. And this has been, first of all, translated into the educational continental strategy, which was adopted a year after SDG 4. It has two strategic objectives. The first has to do with the quality of teaching and revitalizing the profession so as to ensure quality and relevance at all levels. This objective has been further subdivided into operational objectives: recruiting, training, deploying qualified teachers, continuous training, and inculcating African values, furnishing good conditions so as to improve their status and to give them value in the society, to develop the quality and relevance of teaching in teaching materials, improving quality assurance, evaluation of the results of teaching and learning, strengthen programs to improve competencies in civic education, compensate innovative teachers, and so on. This is an important aspect with regard to teaching, and which is the first strategic objective under the educational continental strategy. The second instrument which I'd like to mention is the high-level Pan-African Conference, which you mentioned on education, which took place in April 2018 in Nairobi, and which aims to bring African countries to commit themselves to transforming the educational system in Africa to satisfy or meet SDG 4. The declaration, which was adopted in Nairobi in April 2018, encourages all African countries to align their strategies and national and sub-regional frameworks, to align them with the continental strategy, the objectives of the strategy, as well as the targets of SDG 4. There is a point of this declaration which speaks explicitly to the quality of teaching and encourages the appropriate support and recruiting, training of teachers, development of professional programs at every level, including early childhood education, to recognize teachers as professionals, fully fledged professionals, strengthen consultation and partnerships with the teacher organizations. So these are two important elements at the continental level in terms of the response to target C of SDG 4 as far as Africa is concerned. Well, I wanted to ask a further question. You have mentioned extracts from these declarations. Do you think that these declarations are being implemented in the countries? And can you give us an example of your country, Togo, with regard to the second question I asked? What are the measures you have taken in Togo to implement these measures? The declarations are international commitments made by the countries who ratify these agreements. Of course, implementation will differ from country to country. There are some countries who will make greater efforts, but there is monitoring and evaluation. There are monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. And every year, reporting has to be done to indicate how far countries have gone in implementing these. So there is a follow-up. There is the reporting, which will ensure that implementation is concrete. With regard to Togo specifically, what has Togo done? Togo was a host of the 10th forum of the International Task Force on Teachers for Education 2030, and following this forum with regard to the implementation of the different international and African tests, Togo committed itself to engaging in a reform of teacher training. This is a first step. With regard to the reform, we would highlight the level of academic training of early childhood teachers and the strengthening professional training, because it was shown that it is a length of training which will determine the real qualifications of teachers. Togo has also reviewed the curriculum for the training of these teachers, for secondary teachers as well. and placing the training at university level with a harmonized curriculum. And with regard to higher education, Togo decided that university training would be obligatory for all researchers and lecturers. That's the first stage. The second stage is, with the support of UNESCO, to design a national policy on teachers as a national framework on the basis of the guide developed by UNESCO with the 9 dimensions to determine everything relating to teachers in the country. Togo added a 10th dimension with regard to social dialogue with teachers, because we realized that for a long time there were misunderstandings between the government and teachers. And so to avoid this blocking the way the system works in the future, we added this 10th dimension, which will ensure continuous dialogue with regard to policies and their implementation. This started we adopted a particular statute, a specific statute on teachers, and which creates the implementation framework for the policy with regard to the recruiting of teachers, their training, their deployment, their career plan, motivation, and remuneration of teachers in Togo. So these are the elements that I would highlight with regard to the results of the 10th forum, but also with regard to SDG 4 Target C and continental tests with regard to teaching in Africa. So, says the moderator, these are very important decisions with great impact.
Time, because our interpreters will give us only 10 more minutes to continue the work of the morning, so that they can come back in the afternoon for the afternoon sessions. So I will go to you, Mrs. Reps. Everybody is craving for hearing of you the innovative reforms you have introduced related to the use of technology in education. What can you share with us very crisply about that?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much for the kind words and introduction. And I'm truly sorry that we are running out of time, because I would have loved to have the intervention of the audience. So maybe we can negotiate just a little bit to have the questions and answers, because I can see the curious faces and it would be wonderful. First of all, Estonia, like I said, is a very small country, but when we started out of, just to give you a little background, very short background, is that we didn't have any big companies, or we didn't have ICT networks yet. So when we started to build up the system 27 years ago, we took from the different countries the best that time. So immediately it wasn't outdated. So that was the good start. The first thing what we did, we invested heavily into infrastructure. And we still continue doing it, because it gets outdated so fast. We are by the end of this year, we have covered the whole country with now with the high-speed internet in any remote area, in any place in Estonia. We used to have the Wi-Fi country, but now we are, in addition to that, with 5G country. So everywhere, you can be in the middle of swamp, but you can work digitally. That's the one aim. Also the schools, they are covered with the infrastructure. Why it's important? Because before we start doing the policy, you need to have access to it. So you cannot make a national policy if you don't physically have it. The second is that we don't emphasize so much on laptops or computers. However, we have at least 5 sets of full classrooms in every school. Every classroom has the interactive blackboard and all of that. But in addition to that, it's important what you do with that. And it's first and the most important message is a substance. We don't replace anything. If some debate that ICT replaces teachers, unfortunately, you are wrong. It's not going to happen. You cannot cover the lectures. You cannot do it. Even in a small islands, we have tried to have Skype lectures from the other teacher. At the end of the day, they still have individual counseling. So you can do it, but then it's just a means. Technology just gives you means. It doesn't replace anything. You can have it more effective, but you can at least at the same time have more work. I will give you one very short example. I know we're running out of time. But for example, every classroom, every teacher, every pupil is in internet. What it means is that if you finish your class and you're having a class, in Estonian by law you have 24 pupils, not more, but general statistics is 12. So if you have, let's say, 20 pupils in your class, then each of them gets a report individually, electronically, what they did in a class, what the achievements, what did you study. And of course, it's an extra work for the teachers. There is no question about ICT doesn't relieve the work, but gives you additional work. At the same time, that's every day's direct contact with the pupils' parents, with their grandparents, with their community. You have extremely good access. I am as a parent, every second I know when a class finishes how my kid did and I have opportunity by the end of the day to have direct access to the teachers. So from one side it's extremely effective, you can do a lot of things additionally, but if you start out of telling that it's relieving the time, it's not great. At the end of the day, it frees you time, but while you're doing it, it's effort. Then second thing, what you get out of ICT is information, statistic, data, and to have informed policy making possibilities is amazing. I am as a minister, if I look at the statistics and information I have comparative, let's say 15 years ago, I am young, but I've been in office for many years. So if I look at back for, let's say, 15 years ago, and then the informed choices I can make today, the details I know because of the ICT is amazing. So you really have possibilities to not leave anybody behind because you know the personal level. Every handicapness, every problem, every sickness, of course, in a coded way because we don't use the personal data like that, and then you can support that person. And inclusiveness, because ICT gives opportunities for the very severely different children the possibility to be in the same school. So what we have done in Estonia is that it's in a primary level, like in many other countries, but in Estonia, in a primary level, until the 9th grade, no child can be expelled from a school. You're just not allowed to do it. You need to find a way to deal with every child. Every child. It can be handicapped, it can be very different background, it can be different socioeconomic, ethnic background. The school has to deal with that. And it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult. But you have to do it. Otherwise, somebody is always left behind. So, and ICT gives you this possibility. Gives you information, gives you data, gives you a possibility to ask somebody from the other side of the country or the other different country how I do it. And what I would say, last thing, we're talking about the teachers. But it's not about teachers. This conference is also about support to the teachers, the special health services, and the principals. Because teachers cannot do anything if a principal is stupid. So that's the clear, you know. So you need to deal with the education, a lot to do with the principals. The teachers are the very important task together with principals. Any change in a society can be together with principals. So that's, I know, I abused the time, but I wanted to deliver some of the points. Thank you.
Mrs. Reid. you have explained clearly that it takes a package. It's not one entry point only. And I would like to invite you to join the thematic session on ICT in education that will take place to continue sharing people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that. Thank you.
Even a request that I'm making is for you, tell me and I hear, involve me and I learn. Maybe you can organize a technical meeting of the task force sub-theme group in Estonia. We'll talk
Absolutely.
about that. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mrs. Lachanthaboune, you started telling us about some of the measures your government has taken. Can you pick on any of the sub-theme and elaborate on the impact or the result so far?
Okay, thank you. After the reform, we did the evaluation and we found a lot of success. Previously, many students don't want to enroll in a teacher institution, and after this policy coming up, a lot of students submit to enroll in the teacher institution, that we can find better students to study in teacher institution. Is one thing, and the other thing is if they become teacher, they stay more before they leave the job. This is the one success of the project and the reform. But the challenge remaining, we have still shortage of teacher in some subject and overload in some other subject. And also our country is a very remote one, mountainous one, and we still have a shortage of teachers in the remote area. And of course the quota, we need to have many teachers, because in some village, it's only 10 students, but we need to provide the teachers to them. That's why our government pay a lot of salary for teachers. The number of teachers increasing every year, and now we try to reduce the quota of the recruitment of teachers. That's why the local government recruit the volunteer teachers. Read the collection data last year, we found that we have 20,000 teachers that we have shortage. And we have 10,000 teachers over supply because about the subject. And also the remote one, sometimes 10 students for 2 teachers. This we consider that is oversupply. And we have now more than 10,000 volunteers. We have to do another plan, teacher development plan, to address the issues that we have to work on the volunteer teachers, how we can help them. We cannot recruit all of them, but we try to evaluate the need, what the volunteer teachers that we need, and we try to use the mechanism of cluster school in the remote area. 5 to 7 schools can combine as cluster school, that we can use the teacher together to reduce the number of teachers, and also to provide the equipment and whatever training of teachers in the remote area and in the cluster, to do the professional development from the central down to the school level. That we need to do in the 2016-2020.
Thank you very much. Minister Reid, I know that in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, one of the challenges is attracting boys to school. Can you just, in a gist, give us what measures you are taking to allow boys to stay longer in school, enable teachers to develop appropriate pedagogies for that?
Thank you very much. One of the clear measures, as I said this morning, is our womb to the tomb strategy. We are very pleased that creatively we can guarantee universal primary and secondary education now up to age 18. And that allows for us to have multiple pathways, diverse program, for example, or CAP program, and outside of the traditional sixth form program that our boys can be attracted to. So it's one thing to ensure you have the institutional capacity for our boys, and we're building out brain builder centers from the early childhood to ensure that everybody gets support, early stimulation, have adequate early childhood and primary education institutions right up to age 18. And if you look at our youth unemployment numbers that have actually gone down, it's largely driven by the fact that our boys, who otherwise would have been out of the school system, are now very much back in the education system. So we think that those strategies have been working marvelously.
Thank you very much. I have a lovely letter here from the booth. They say they have authorized us to go up to 13:45, so we have 7 minutes. What I'm going to do is to take two questions, one from a Jamaican participant, one from an international participant. I see 2 hands here. Okay, Fatou, give them the mic.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks to the Honourable Ministers for their very clear, insightful presentations. I'm Dennis Sengdeuane from Excellency International. You were spot on, Honourable Minister from Estonia, on teacher autonomy. That's the way to go. Unfortunately, there's too much control, with the misunderstanding that if you control teachers, then you get the best results. It's unfortunate. I hope you can continue to share with your colleagues in Europe and in OECD countries, and of course globally. That would be appreciated. But here's my question. A lot of education reforms are happening, some of them related to teachers or directly affecting teachers. To what extent have teachers themselves been involved in such reforms? I'm asking this because quite often reforms are made for teachers, or they're made to them rather than with them. So
Okay, Dennis, the gist of the question. How do you involve teachers in the reform you are initiating? And the next question is just behind you, Fatou.
Yes. Hi. So I'm also an international participant with Teach for All, but I was born and raised in Jamaica, so I could be a Jamaican
Because you are
participant.
honest. Go ahead.
Thank you. Great. So like we know the problem of education is like super complex, and the Minister of Estonia kind of said it takes a package. So I'm curious for, Senator Reid, like what do you see as the role of NGOs that focus on educational access as it relates to the vision of education in Jamaica? Like what should they prioritize as it relates to leadership development?
Okay, I will take this to the ministers. You have 1 minute each to address the question directly, and also to say any concluding remarks that you are willing to share with the audience. And the fact that we didn't have time to talk much is an invitation to you to join the deliberations in the groups, in the sessions.
Thank you very much. National Council, or should I say National College on Education and Leadership, is our institution tasked with the development of or principal leadership in the education system. In fact, your master sermon is Darren Henry, is a graduate of that institution, and we have found that the performance of our schools that have employed graduates of NCEL has actually had significant improvement in the quality outcome of those institutions. It takes cash to care, so one of the roles an NGO can play is to partner with NCEL or help to fund more principals on leaders who want to improve their leadership skills. Of course, workshops, trips abroad, for example, or conferences expose to different leadership. OECD conference, for example, is one of those conferences that a lot of our principals attend from time to time. Also, at the school level, a lot of schools have professional development sessions, and NGOs and other stakeholders from time to time are requested, make themselves available to go in within schools to have leadership development programs. And I would also include the parents as well, because you also need to try to get to even PTA leadership, get to the parents. So because you talk about package minister, colleague minister, we need the parents, we need the school, we need the students all on board in one whole package to make this
Thank you, Honourable. Madame Lachanthaboune, yes. How do you involve teachers? The question from the audience.
The teachers, we do the consultation with teachers and also local government and community as well to do the reform. And for NGO, we have a lot of NGO involving in education, more than 30, almost 40 NGO working with our Ministry of Education, but different level. Before setting up the project, we involve the community and also the local government, the province governor or district level to involve in the project. After the project approved, we set up the regulation on MOU signing. If the NGO working with many provinces, the NGO, this NGO signed the MOU with the department within Ministry of Education. If they work with only one province, they sign with the province education sector. And if they work with the district, they can sign with the district level. We consider that NGOs are our development partner. They help us a lot in terms of the remote area to improve the education quality.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Akakunumado, comment est-ce que les syndicats d'enseignants?
How are teachers' unions involved in the development of policies? Well, teachers' groups and groupings are presented by a body which operates periodically. It is made up of representatives of teachers' unions, ministries of education and other partner ministries. Now, this body meets regularly to have reflection on the challenges and the educational policy. They also deal with questions that have to do with teachers, recruitment, salaries, motivation, conditions of work. And this allows them to have a regular stock taking and to deal with the obstacles that they encounter in their schools. Thank you.
NGOs and teachers' participation.
Thank you. Very shortly, two ways. First, we collect a lot of data. We do a lot of questionnaires, which actually sometimes teachers appreciate, sometimes they find it additional burden. And then on the basis of that, there is a lot of policy decisions proposed. And once you propose something, then of course teachers have a lot to say. We have, a population is 1.5 million, but we have more than 70,000. So comparison, if you look at the statistics, 1.5 million in general, 70,000 are employed in education. They have enormous power. So if they say no, the policy, however smart, you don't do it. But it doesn't also mean that every single policy line is according to their liking. Can be, for example, like I said, the ICT, they said it takes their time, or for example, individual counseling. It's by law obligatory. They sometimes don't like it, but that's obligatory. And what we try to do is remunerate, pay them a little bit more when they do it. So there are some things which we think is better good, and then the association agrees because it's good, and then maybe we need to persuade. And for example, teacher training, retraining, that sometimes they find it burdensome. For example, kids with special needs, so we have retrainings for them, obligatory. They find it, go on Friday and Saturday, it's not so fun. They come back and say it was a good thing. So that's how we involve them as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this ministerial panel. Everybody will leave the room not fully satisfied with the quantity of information we would like from these gold mines of high-level policymakers. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. you can see that we need your wisdom more. So over the next 3 days, if you could avail yourself to us to share with us your insight for the experience you have innovating, establishing reforms, implementing them for what we are aiming to do. I would like to give you one more round of applause to the ministers and invite Winsome Gordon to come for some housekeeping announcement.
Thank you, Adam. Good afternoon, everyone. I must start off by apologizing for your lunchtime. Nevertheless, I see that you have been richly fed otherwise. Now we turn to another type of nutrition and nurture. Please have your lunch in the next room. That's next door. And when you have finished your lunches, please return to this room. Everyone. From here, we'll go to our caucus rooms, but you wouldn't know yet where the caucus rooms are. So everyone should come back. We should be back here by when? How long, Adam? We should be back here by 2:30? What time? 1 hour? And 1 hour from now? It's 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock. It says 2:45. 2:45. So we'll start here at 2:45. We'll come here. Then you'll go with your ushers to your place of choice. But please remember, outside there are some lists that you will need to fill in according to the areas that you would like to participate in, the caucus that you want to participate in. It is to your right going out. Mr. Drisdale is there. The lists are on the counter. You can do that and fill in the list anytime during your lunchtime. Anytime. So some will probably go right to the list because since you have to, it's a buffet style. So we can use the time that you would normally use in the buffet line to fill in those forms. I thank you very much. Bon appetit. And please return here at 3:45. Thank you.
I just